Okay, ladies and gentlemen, here I am again, Tony Salvador, with your next edition of With All Due Respect. I know you've been on pins and needles waiting for the next feature. But you know what? I was reminded of a great bucket list thing that I had done. And in fact, I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday, and he reminded me of it, or I reminded him actually. And I told him, you know what? I think I'm going to do a With All Due Respect. He's one of my subscribers, you know, a dedicated watcher of my videos. So I thought I'd, and he was a part of this. So I thought I'd touch on this. Now I'd mentioned in one of the last videos I did that I'd had a bunch of bucket list things, you know, flying with the Blue Angels, you know, running the Bulls in Pamplona. I'll touch on all those sometime in the future. But one of my great bucket lists was that I had an opportunity to play the Augusta National Golf Course, okay? But it's much larger than that, and the story behind it is actually pretty good. There are some of these bucket list things that happen fairly quickly and fairly easily. You know, if you know Isabel Lemon, who was our promotions manager for KNBR, you get to fly with the Blue Angels that quickly. But this one took some work, and so I thought I'd start with that. Now, the gentleman that I'm going to refer to here, there's about 3 or 4 of them. And the first guy that called me at some month, whatever year, and actually it was 2000, I believe it was 2004, okay, or 5. Anyway, he called me. His name is Peter Kump, a good friend of mine who I met as my client at the Chevron Oil Company. And Peter was one of the big rollers. Big oil. Big Peter Kump. Anyway, he called me one day out of the clear blue. By this time now, I had met him in San Francisco, and he had moved to Atlanta and had a, you know, great life down there, was running the big operation for Chevron down there. Anyway, he calls me one day and he says, "Hey, Tony, you know the guy that you met?" Now, I went and visited Peter, who invited me down. I went down. We played golf for 3 days, and I met a bunch of his friends and whatever. And one of the friends that I met was a guy named Rob Johnston. Now, Rob Johnston is a big-time real estate guy in Atlanta, owns tons of buildings, apartments. These are residential, big roller. And he said, you know, this guy that you met, this Rob Johnson, he said, well, he approached me. He wants to come to San Francisco and play golf at 3 specific golf courses. And I said, yeah. And he said, well, the first one is the Olympic Club. Now, that was easy because Peter was a member there. I was a honorary member, but I was a member as well. Anyway, the other 2 were a little bit tougher. I'll start with the second toughest, was Pebble Beach. And, you know, it's a fairly complicated thing to get the right timing on this thing and the tee times and all of that, you know. They got a lot of 2:10 tee times, but when you want to go off at, you know, you want to go off at 9:30 or 10 o'clock, it's a whole different story. So I said, yeah. And then he said, and then the final one, and Peter says to me kindly, look, I know you're the guy with all the juice in town, and I'm wondering if you can get us on Cypress Point. Now, for those of you who don't know anything about golf, the second hardest place to get on, besides Augusta National, is Cypress Point. But fortunately, it's in our backyard. And, you know, I know a couple of folks, and I said to Peter, well, I have no idea, but let me see what I can do. So we set the date in terms of when Rob Johnson was going to, and Peter were going to come to town. And actually, Peter may have moved back to the Bay Area by that time. I'm not sure. But anyway, when Rob was going to come to town, and it was like a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And so Peter had the Olympic Club handled. I had a friend of mine at Pebble Beach at the time, a gent named Rich Patterson, who I had worked to a fare thee well, and he was a great guy, okay? And we did a lot of work on behalf of Pebble Beach during the AT&T Pro-Am. And so I got to know Rich pretty well, and called Rich and asked for a date, the date that coincided with Rob's, arrival in San Francisco, and in terms of whether or not it fit into our schedule and whether or not we could set up a very good tea time at Pebble. And he said, well, let me work on it and I'll get back to you. And you know what? Sure enough, he gets back to me fairly quickly and says, you know what? You're all set. And in addition to that, we put you in one of our homes right along the first fairway, so you don't have to walk far for your tea time. So he set us up in a 3-bedroom, fabulous place right off of the left side of the first tee of Pebble Beach. And so now the tough one. And the tough one was Cypress. Now, here's the thing, okay? I had met, when I came to town in 1982, through very good friends of mine, Austin Walsh, who's since passed away, Brent Osborne, who I still know, and others. I met a gent who at the time ran Time Magazine, when Time Magazine was a big deal in town. And he was the general manager of Time Magazine. His name was Fred Gruber. Freddie was a very well-connected guy. He not only belonged to Cypress Point, he belonged to San Francisco Golf Club as well. So I wouldn't have doubted that if he stayed around longer, he probably would have been a member of Augusta National as well. But at the time, he was a member of Cypress. Now, to be honest with you, I had met Freddie several times through these group lunches that we had and whatever. And he's a terrific guy, just a great guy, great stories. Lots of fun stuff that we used to talk about. But I was just one of the group. You know, it might have been 4 of us for lunch, 5, 6 of us for lunch. I had my stories and I, kind of kicked in and whatever. And Freddie and I had a pretty good relationship. However, by the time of Peter's call, I probably, and I don't want to exaggerate this, but I probably hadn't talked to old Freddie Gruber in 4 years. Okay. And I mean, never ran into him, never talked to him, didn't pick up the phone to call him. My big mistake here. Okay. But I thought, well, do I have the cojones to call this guy out of the clear blue and see if he could host me and 2 of my friends at Cypress Point on a specific day too? This is the other thing. Okay. Not just, geez, I got a couple of friends who would like to play Cypress at any time at your convenience. Oh, no. This was at our convenience. Anyway, I call Freddie. Freddie, how you doing? Tony Salvador. Pause. Oh, yeah, Tony, how you doing? Right away, I'm thinking to myself, hey, I'm in trouble. Anyway, I tell Freddie the whole story, and that this gent, Rob Johnston, wants to come out and wants to have the opportunity to play Cypress Point. Now, I'll backtrack for here a minute, because Peter told me in the original conversation that we had about hosting Rob at these 3 magnificent golf venues, that if we were able to pull this together, then he promised Peter that he, in turn, could get Peter and I, along with him, on the Augusta National Golf Club, okay? And the reason why he could get us on Augusta was because his very good friend in Atlanta, who he had met and worked with and did a lot of work with, was a member at the time of Augusta National, a gent by the name of Billy Payne. If that name doesn't ring a bell, he eventually became chairman of Augusta National. But prior to that, he was a very well-known big business guy in Atlanta, and he was in fact in charge of the Atlanta Olympics back in, I think that was 94, 95. And Rob was a very good friend of his, and Rob had been invited many times to Augusta to play with Billy. And Billy had said to him many times, look it, you know what, somewhere along the line, hey, I'd be happy to, host a couple of your friends if you want to do it and whatever. And I think Rob had, he picked him, he actually got it done for a couple of friends of his in Atlanta. So now he tells Peter this, right? So Peter and I are now scheming to get on Augusta National, okay? So I tell Freddie, that I ask him if he'd be available on this particular date at around this particular time. Boy, this is big nerve, I want to tell you. I'm picking the date and the tee time. I wish I'll do anything to get on Augusta. But, Freddie pauses for a moment, and I said to him, well, let me tell you about this guy. So I tell him about Rob Johnson, and I tell him about Peter Kump, because he was a local guy. And I say to him, and here's the bottom line. And I tell him the story about Rob being friends with Billy Payne, and that if we can, pull this triple off, this golfing triple off, that he's going to get us on Augusta. Freddie's the kind of guy. Now, Freddie had played Augusta many times. So Freddie went to me, you know what? Sounds like a plan. Okay, I can do it, 10 o'clock. Oh, jeez. Unbelievable. So I called Peter back and I say, well, guess what, guy? It's all set, okay? Rob comes out. We play Olympic Club first. We played Pebble Beach first, stayed overnight, in our Lux digs along the first fairway. The next day, woke up, had a quick breakfast, and shot over the 17-mile drive to Cypress Point. And Freddie was there waiting for us, a great host, took us around. And the reason why I had to ask him is that you can't get on Cypress without a member joining you. So Freddie was the member, introduced them all around, and we had a great time. Took us 4 hours, whatever, 3.5, 4 hours. Freddie was a great host, and we thanked him in the end, asked him if there was anything we could do for him. He didn't want anything. I knew he wouldn't, and we said goodbye. And I then took off that night. I had to go back to work. Gee, imagine that, work. Whoosh. And the deal was that Peter was going to take Rob to the Olympic Club the next day and play there. And then I think Rob was leaving the next day after that. So there was the plan. Peter takes Rob to Olympic the next day. They play. Now, Peter just told me this one. Rob somehow throws out his back during the round at Olympic Club, the third round in a row. He's thrown out his back. He can't walk. He's stumbling around. Peter's got to load him in his car and takes him to his mother's home, who lived in San Francisco. And they've got Rob laying on his mother's floor, giving him massages and whatever to try to bring him back. Well, I guess, in the end, it worked out. He was fine. He got on the plane the next day and left. Okay, so now Peter told me that he worked him over big time, and we did as well at Cypress. Looking forward to playing Augusta, Not a problem. I'm telling you guys, Billy's a good buddy of mine, whatever. It's not a problem. Okay. So Peter hosts him. Rob leaves the next day, and now Peter and I are just rubbing our hands together. We're going, oh, we're going to make Augusta. This is unbelievable. And again, now this is 2004, maybe 2005. Okay. And so time passes. I mean, it wasn't going to happen the next week. We understood this. Time passes. It's 1 month. It's 2 months. It's 6 months. It's 8 months. Okay. The Masters comes on TV. Peter and I are on the phone. Yeah, we're going to get right on to Augusta. Well, Peter knew Rob Johnston a lot better than I did, okay? So he proceeds to then start breaking his chops on the phone. Rob, Tony and I waiting to get invited. Oh, yeah, I haven't had the time. And, now Rob, Peter and I are now going, oh, this is it. He's going to blow us off. I mean, it's just not going to happen, okay? This big plan we have, and it's not going to happen, okay? Well, one day, and I mean literally a year and a half later, and by this time we had kind of almost forgotten about it. We used to kid around about Rob and that he didn't pull through for us and whatever. And even with Peter breaking his chops, the guy never came through. So whatever, time passes and our lives go on and whatever. And one day I get a call out of the clear blue from Peter Kump, and he said to me, Tony, you're not going to believe this. I just heard from Rob Johnston. I went, get out. He said, well, not only for the reasons that you know why I'm calling you, but here's an even better story. By that time, Billy Payne had become chairman of the Augusta National Golf Club. And one of the first people he invited to become a member was Rob Johnston. So now, instead of Rob having to ask Billy and tiptoe around and, geez, I got these guests and, whatever, okay. And I'm sure he didn't want to tell him that he had bribed us, to get him on Cyprus and all. So, as it turns out, Rob was the member. Oh, my God in heaven. So, here we are. It's now a week after the Masters in 2006, okay? Peter and I set up the whole thing. I think, and again, I'm kind of juggling the dates here because I don't know if Peter then had moved back to the Bay Area or was still in Atlanta. But the point is that I wound up flying to Atlanta, and he may have flown with me, although I think he picked me up at the airport. Anyway, he picked me up at the airport, and off we went to the Augusta National Golf Club. Now, here's the deal, okay? Because Rob became a member, he could even invite 3 people now, okay, rather than 2, because it was going to be Rob, Peter, me, and Billy Payne was going to be our host. So he then, because he's a member, he can invite another person. Well, Peter and I discussed this, and we said, well, we know the guy. Because as it turns out, the guy lived in Atlanta, was a tremendous golfer, and a very good friend of ours, a guy named Ron Cross, who I met in like 1994 or so when he came to town for the PGA Tour and ran the Tour Championship, which was held for 2 years at the Olympic Club. And I became a friend of his, and I had the, he was a good guy to know during the Tour Championship. I had the General Pinochet badge, I could get any place, valet parking, whatever, okay? Whatever, anyway. So we decided, you know what, he would be a great fourth. And he lived in Atlanta, and obviously when we told him about it, he jumped all over it, and he joined us. So off we go. Now this is a great story, okay? So we drive up from Atlanta. It's really not that far. I think it was like an hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever it was. And we drive up, and Peter is driving, and I'm sitting in the passenger seat, and Ron's behind us. So we pull up to the gate at Magnolia Lane. We can see the magnolias down this road, just spectacular. And the guy comes out from the guard shack, with the Smokey the Bandit hat on, okay? And, yes, may I help you? So Peter says, yes, we're here. We're guests of Mr. Johnston. We're here to play golf today. And the guy said, well, that's great. Terrific. And your names? So Peter said, well, it's Peter Kump, K-U-M-P, Ron Cross, and Tony Salvador. So the guy's looking at his book, and he goes, yeah, all right, Mr. Kump, check. Mr. Cross, check. What was that last name? The third gentleman? And I kind of raised my hand because I was sitting, the guy was leaning over where Peter's driver's side was. And I said, Tony Salvador, that's me. The guy goes, okay, oh, sure, not a problem. He goes down the list. Nah, no Tony Salvador. Quite frankly, I think, now I have a theory about this. Quite frankly, I think my name ended in a vowel. And he was very upset that I was going to play. This is the guard. But whatever. Anyway, they called in. They had to call the front office to make sure I was actually on the list. As it turns out, I was on the list. Whatever. Okay. Drive up Magnolia Lane. Fabulous. You know, you've all seen that cul-de-sac thing that goes around in front of just spectacular. People all over you, taking your clubs, welcoming you, whatever. I think Rob Johnston was there to greet us. It was fabulous. We just had a magnificent time. And I want to say that I think Peter, Ron, and I thought, well, we're going to drive, we're driving up, we're going to play. And Rob had said, after we play, we'll have lunch and then whatever. And so we thought, well, this would be great, and then we'll go and we'll drive back to Atlanta. And I fly home the next day or whatever. Well, as it turns out, we were actually staying over for the night. We were staying over for the night because we got there later in the afternoon. I guess I thought, well, we'd go out at whatever, by 2:30 or whatever when we got there, or 12:15 or whatever it was. And as it turns out, that wasn't the case. We were going to stay over the night. So we're escorted to our digs. And we were staying in a place called the Tennessee Cabin, okay? The Tennessee Cabin. Right down from the Eisenhower Cabin and the Butler Cabin, right down the road there, not a problem, okay? Stocked with Tennessee bourbon and whiskeys and whatever, okay? And it was a beautiful layout, all central, kind of big, area with, couches and chairs and whatever, and a little kind of, a little kitchenette kind of thing with a refrigerator, etc., and whatever. And then 3 ensuite bathrooms that were on either side on a corner of the thing. And that's where we stayed. Now, we were told by Rob also. This is pretty interesting. Well, we were told by Rob, because one of the things, now, by this time, 2006, cell phones were in, okay? And Rob said, Cheese Gents, I got to let you know this, all right? No cell phone usage, okay? Because the first thing I wanted to do was call some friends and call my wife, I'm here, it's unbelievable. I was scared to death. Actually, Peter told me a story later that he was in the closet using his cell phone. Anyway, we dressed up, and I had said to Rob, Rob, now suit and tie or sport coat and tie for dinner, right? Because we were going to have dinner that evening in the club. And he said, oh, yeah, absolutely. So I said, well, geez, good news. I brought a green sport jacket. I think that'd be okay, huh? Rob, now remember, Rob's a new member, right? Don't blow your nose in the wrong way. They're going to escort you out the front door. He goes, oh, no, Tony, you can't wear a green jacket. I said, no, I'm kidding. Anyway, we throw on the blazers, and off we go. And the club, actually, there was a lot of people there, the head of Citibank and whoever other big shots were there. And the members are all in their green jackets, okay? They all have the green jacket because they're members, and they have to wear the green jackets when they're on the property. Obviously not if they're playing golf, but other than that, they have to wear the green jackets. And so there they were, and we had this great dinner, wine, and of course this is all on Rob, okay? There's no bill passed or anything, so this is all on Rob. And then they ask if we want to take a little tour of the clubhouse. Well, obviously we do. And they take us up to the champions locker room. And there they all are. The lockers with all the plates, Jack, Tiger, whatever. I mean, they're just, every winner's got his own, not the deceased guys, they take them down. But all the current living people have their own locker, or they share a locker with somebody, and spectacular. And then they take us up to the Crow's Nest, which is where the amateurs stay. Tiger stayed up there. Phil stayed up there when he played, when he was still an amateur. Just a little kind of almost a college dormy kind of feel up there, you know, but a real nice little place. And then they took us down into the wine cellar as well. Hey, yeah, you would have seen that wine cellar. Unbelievable. Everybody's names are on it, you know, everybody who has the, you know, their own wine station and whatever. It's just spectacular. Wake up the next morning, breakfast. Off we go to the, actually, we're walking out after breakfast and we're going, yeah, I wonder where our clubs are. Yeah, I wonder where our clubs are. They were at the driving range with our caddies. Had us all set up, you know, whatever. And I had, by that time now, my back, which folks who know me know that my back is lousy. And so anyway, I had inquired because, you know, it's a walking course, right? And I had inquired that if I was going to be able to use a cart, and that if I wasn't going to be able to use it, I was going to be in trouble, you know, in terms of trying to walk around that course, because it is extremely hilly. And those who know golf and have watched a lot of the Masters, they always talk about how hilly it is. They undersell how hilly it is. It is really unbelievably hilly. Anyway, I was told, look, you're watching too much Masters on TV, you know. 70% of the people who belong here are 70 years old. They all use carts. So that wasn't a problem. Anyway, off we go. We play 18. Every spectacular, you know, setting you've seen. We, you know, come down the hill on 11, over the hill on 11, and there's the pond on the left, and there's, you know, the par 3. It's like a dream come true, okay? An absolute dream come true. I'll give my friend Peter props, okay? Rob was a decent golfer. I kind of hung in there as well. I could still play back in the day. Ron Cross, a very good golfer, so he played very well. And Peter, however, when we get to the 14th hole, it's kind of an uphill and then a blind second shot. Anyway, and we played from the members' tee, so it was probably 360 or 70 or whatever it was, okay? The pros, I'm sure, play from 480, but we were, you know, they won't even let you play from the pro tees. They won't even let you play from there. We actually walked back to a couple of the pro tees. Unbelievable. Binocular just to find the front tees. Never mind the rest of the hole. Anyway, so, you know, 375-yard par 4, this is number 14 with a blind second shot. Peter sinks his second shot. An eagle at 14 at Augusta National. Unbelievable. Rest of the round, terrific, great chatting, whatever. And incidentally, I walked every downhill part of the course. Now, any uphill deal, I jumped in the cart and the caddy walked. When we'd start, and like number 6 is a par 3 and it's almost all downhill. And I'd say to the caddy, look, I'm going to walk. And he said, yep, not a problem. He jumps in the cart, takes it out for me and whatever. So it was great. And we're done at 18, you know, up the hill. There it is. Looks entirely different when no stands are there or TV cameras or whatever. You know, it's kind of barren, actually. And we shake hands and we thank Rob and the whole thing. And remember, we're going to have lunch now, too. This was the payoff, and then we're leaving. So Rob goes, oh, well, it's great. Geez, you know, and he looks at his watch and he goes, you know what? It's a little early. He said, I don't know. He said, you guys in for an emergency 9? So not only do we get to play Augusta National, but we get an emergency 9. Anyway, go in, have lunch, you know, thank him up and down. What a tremendous, tremendous experience. And that was my time at the Augusta National Golf Course. Oh, and by the way, I know you're out there. I can hear you breathing.